My mother-in-law despises me but loves my son. My mother-in-law has bipolar disorder but won't seek treatment. Everyone in the family knows something is wrong but they tiptoe around the issue because she's a ticking time bomb 90% of the time. She disapproved of me from the start for reasons unknown. My husband says she's never liked any of his girlfriends. It's some complex she has about her precious little boy. No one is ever good enough for him. She surprised us by showing up to our elopement. We both invited our parents and my sister last minute and everyone except my mother-in-law was thrilled. She was quiet and scowled the whole time. She's a NICU nurse and travels for work as we live in a rural area, so she wasn't around a lot. Whenever she would visit, I would try and extend the olive branch and see if she'd like to hang out and maybe try and connect. I grew up with my grandmother living with us and her and my mom had such a wonderful relationship. I thought that if I got to know my mother-in-law, maybe we could have that. Nope. Half the time it was an excuse about being tired and the other half the time she wouldn't even respond. She actually got in the habit of not telling us when she was in town. I brushed it off. I can't force her to be my friend. I know it makes my husband sad that we aren't close, but I can't help that the woman doesn't want me around. In the 2 years my husband and I have been together, I've seen my mother-in-law 5 times. The big issues started when I got pregnant. My husband and I had been trying and we were over the moon at the news. We were both so excited and ready to be parents. My parents were overjoyed at the news and have been so supportive and loving the whole way. When we told my mother-in-law she was awful. We had prefaced seeing them with the fact that we had news we wanted to share with them. She postponed us coming over twice and when we actually arrived, she was still in her pajamas with unbrushed hair and bad breath. When we shared the news, she said, "I was dreading that this is what you'd say," and then proceeded to go on a rant about how we're too young and we won't enjoy it and won't make it as parents. I was mortified. She looked at me and flat out told me she wished I wasn't pregnant. My husband and I quickly made an excuse to leave. We were both crushed but we were determined to not let it get to us and focus on our new, growing family. After about a month, she sent me a long-winded text that was less of an apology and more of an excuse. She brushed over her cruel words and said she was simply blindsided by the news and now is so excited to be a grandmother. I didn't respond. The next interaction came on the 4th of July. I was several months along and was so hungry all of the time, but the smell of cooking meat would make me so sick. I have celiac disease so I'm used to bringing my own alternatives to people's houses to accommodate my food restriction. My in-laws were in town for the 4th. My parents invited us to their house for the 4th and we happily accepted. In-laws never reached out to us about plans. My husband texted them the day before to see what their plans were and father-in-law said they would have a barbecue and they wanted us to come. My husband asked what food would be served. With my dietary restriction, the only thing I could eat would be a plain hamburger patty, but I was worried it would make me sick with the pregnancy. My husband asked if there was anything I could eat. Mother-in-law responds by saying she didn't really think about me and was more concerned with catering to my sister-in-law's friends. My husband asked if we should bring some food for me and they said no, that the barbecue was supposed to be a special thing and they had some chips I could snack on. Keep in mind, I'm 4 months pregnant at this point and my choice was a whole meal that my parents made that I could eat, or chips. I texted my mother-in-law and politely declined the invitation and told her that in the future if she wanted me to attend events centered around food, to please either provide something I could eat or give me some notice so I could get some food together for myself. She lost it. She didn't respond to my message but texted my husband non-stop about how I was so cruel and cold to her and how I ruined her holiday. I texted her saying that if she's upset with me, she can talk to me about it, not my husband. Furthermore, I told her that she has established the precedent that we aren't friends and I don't want to be her friend, but I want her to be nice to me. I went so far as to say that if she wants to have a relationship with my kid, she needs to behave. She never responded to my message and I don't recall her texting me to this day. She ended up making a group chat with me and my husband months later, but she'd never talked to me, just my husband. I didn't speak to her for many months. She never checked on me during my pregnancy, didn't even ask how I was doing. My baby was born big and healthy in December. By this time, my mother and father-in-law had moved down to Arizona. They did come to visit after my son was born and I endured an awful visit. My mother-in-law wanted to cuddle and love on my baby and give me endless unsolicited advice, but I had promised my husband I would play nice. I was polite, nothing more. I can't get the image of her telling me she didn't want me pregnant out of my head. It was the worst thing to hear as a new mother. And now she wants to cuddle on my baby. Speaking of unsolicited, she now sends packages of stuff to my door that I don't want. She sent a bassinet that was too big for our small bedroom. She sent a noise machine that didn't work out of the box. She sent a huge wipe warmer that didn't fit on my changing table. She sent clothes that were too small for my son. And she sends all the packages anonymously to my door with no return slip. I've either donated everything or gifted it to a pregnant friend of mine. Lately, my mother-in-law has taken to FaceTiming my husband to see my son. If I'm in the room, she won't talk to me. She won't say hi. She won't ask how I'm doing, even though I'm only 4 months postpartum after an insanely traumatic birth where we could have lost both my son and I. She acts like I don't exist and it drives me nuts. And she knows I'm in the room when she FaceTimes because she can see I'm the one holding my son. She says she wants to visit soon, but I don't want her to see my son. I told her that if she didn't want to be amicable with me, she wouldn't get to see my son. I don't want to be close with her, but some common decency would be nice. If I'm around when she's calling, just be polite and say hi, and stop sending all this stuff to my door. I've got enough on my plate working full-time with a special needs 4-month-old. Having to deal with giant shipments showing up to my door with no notice is an extra task I don't need. You want to know what the cherry on top is? I had told her at one point when my husband and I were dating about my grandmother who had recently passed. She was the one that lived with us. She practically raised me. She passed right before I met my husband and I feel like I'm still grieving her loss. I called her my Gram and Grammy. And what name did my mother-in-law choose? Gram. I feel my heart break a little bit every time I hear her say it because even though it's been 2 years, I'm still grappling with the loss of my grandmother. She had dementia before she passed and it was hard on all of us. I'm still trying to cope with watching my beloved Gram literally lose her mind slowly over the course of several years. And my mother-in-law knows this and chose that name. My wife told me someone else is her soulmate. My wife, Emily, met her best friend Chuck in high school. They became close friends, and Chuck came out to Emily as gay. Emily was supportive. A year or so later, Chuck came out to his parents. They disowned him and kicked him out, and Chuck ended up living with Emily and her parents for the rest of high school. Emily and I started dating after college, and she told me all about Chuck and how close they were and how he was like a brother. I met Chuck, and we got along and became friends. Chuck is a good guy. At the time, Chuck was dating a guy, and they ended up moving in together about the same time that Emily and I got engaged. Emily and I have been married for 5 years now. I'm a project manager and took on a year-long project in another city. I have to leave at 5:30 a.m. every morning and get home around 6:30 p.m. Emily and I had a long talk about my job before I took on this project. We knew it would be a sacrifice for me to be working so much, but I'm getting more money than I ever thought I would. After this project, we can pay off our student debt and start trying to have a baby. We both agreed the money was worth it since it's only a year. That year will be up in late November. In March, Chuck caught his boyfriend cheating. He was devastated. Emily immediately told him he could move in with us. I was fine with him moving in but not happy that Emily didn't even discuss it with me first. Chuck was pretty broken up, and Emily was giving him lots of love and attention. I was fine with it because I know how much she loves Chuck, and he did need her. I also did my best to support him and make him feel loved. For a while, this was fine, but as time went on, Emily has continued to pour all of her attention into Chuck. Sometimes I get home from work, and neither of them is there, and I found out they went to a movie or out to dinner together. I don't think there is anything romantic or intimate between them, but it has been annoying that I get left out of all the plans. The past few weeks, several things have happened. The three of us went to a party, and someone joked about Chuck being our third wheel, and Emily said, "Chuck is not the third wheel." I said, "What?" And she said, "I've known Chuck longer than I've known you." A week or so after that, Emily and Chuck went out dancing one night. I had to work the next day, so I stayed home. I woke up at about 3 a.m., and Emily was not in bed. I went and found her and Chuck cuddled up on the couch asleep with the TV on. Both of those things made me uncomfortable. I also realized I had been working so much I was just sort of letting Emily and Chuck plan everything, and I had not planned a date night in a while. I decided I needed to be more active, so I planned a date night for last Friday. When I first told Emily, she was excited, as we had not been on a date just the two of us in a while. Friday, I got home at 6:30, and Emily and Chuck were not there. I took a shower and got ready. About 7:15, I finally called Emily, as we had reservations at 8. She answered, and when I asked where she was, she said she and Chuck had gone shopping and were getting some dinner. I was kind of stunned and asked about our date. She laughed and said, "Oh, I forgot." Oh well. And that was that. She didn't even invite me to join them. So, a point I should make here, my dad was very controlling of my mom and had an anger problem where he would yell and throw things. He never threw things at us, but it was still scary as a kid. I have worked very hard to not be like him. I've tried to never be controlling of Emily or tell her what to do. I also tend to shut down when I get angry. When Emily forgot our date, I was mad, so I didn't say anything right then, but I knew I needed to address how I was feeling. So later that evening, I told her we needed to talk. I had written down some things so I could stay focused. I started by saying that I loved Chuck, and he was always welcome in our home, but that I felt like our marriage was suffering and we needed to work on us. Emily blew up. She thought I was attacking Chuck. I guess I didn't word things well, and she started defending him and attacking me. We have never had a big fight before, we always talk and work things out. I was stunned that she was attacking me. She said some awful things. Then she said, "Chuck is my soulmate, and you just have to get used to that." I just shut down. I didn't even know how to process that. I love Emily more than anything in the world, but in that moment, I realized she loves Chuck more than she loves me. I thought Emily and I were soulmates, but to hear her say she considers someone else her soulmate has been devastating. I don't remember the rest of the talk. She huffed off after a while and slept on the couch. She and Chuck left together on Saturday and were gone most of the day. When they got back, she acted like nothing had happened. On Sunday, she even made a small joke and batted her eyes at me, something she does when she's flirting with me. Normally I love it, but this time it just made me sick. I told her this was a busy week at work, and I was just going to stay at a hotel near the job site, something I've done a few times before, so I haven't seen her since Sunday night. I don't know what to do. Typing all of this up has made me realize I am really burned out with all of this travel. Maybe I checked out too much and haven't given her enough attention. But how do I move forward knowing she will never love me as much as I love her? My cat was the same age as me and celebrated my college graduation. My cat and I are both 23. Every time I left for college I would say goodbye not knowing if he would still be around when I got back. I graduated a month ago and he made it. My sweet cat, Yellow, passed away a few weeks after my graduation. He made it to graduation weekend and was around for the celebrations and got some treats at the party, including lots of milk. He hadn't been doing all that well in the months leading up to it, so unfortunately, as much as it broke our hearts, we made the decision to let him go. I was given the day off of work to spend time with my family and him. He got plenty of love and treats. Yellow lived a very long wonderful life. My parents bought a plot of land in 2002. When they did, they had no idea it came with an added bonus, a cat. Yellow was a stray who had been living off the land for quite some time. Oddly, he was fixed. I'm aware of catch and release programs for feral cats, but Yellow didn't have anything that signified he was a part of a program like that. In the area we lived in, it was unfortunately common for people to abandon pets there. My family cared for several cats over the years, so while we will never know for sure, we assumed he had been abandoned. I was 4, and was of course obsessed with the giant yellow kitty that was hanging around all the time. I kept pointing at him and calling him a yellowy cat, so that is where his full name came from. Yellowy. Yellow was taken to the vet in 2005, and was said to be 5 years old. He was officially part of the family. Yellow loved food. He was obsessed with food. His oddest obsession was cheese. If I ever left any food with cheese unattended, he would immediately steal it. Mac and cheese was his absolute favorite thing to steal, but it was hard to ever be angry with him. Yellow was a pretty boy and he knew it. He loved attention and loved being brushed and petted and would meow his little heart out. When we brushed him, he would spin in circles to make sure he was even. If you were not giving him enough attention, he would hook his paw around your hand and pull you to him to pet him. Yellow's biggest challenge happened a few years after we adopted him. He was struck by a car. He would have passed away, had the lady driving not acted quickly. She scooped him up and carried him to our door, asking if he belonged to us and apologizing profusely. I'm grateful for her every day. She struck him, but that could have happened to anyone. A lot of people would have just left him there, but she saved his life. He woke up while we were on the phone with the vet and wandered over to his food bowl to start eating, despite having multiple serious injuries. He made a full recovery, only losing a few teeth and having a permanent white tuft of fur on his head where the vet had to put a staple. After that incident, he became strictly an indoor cat, though he did protest. Yellow was with us through it all. He was my entire childhood. I have very few memories of times before he was in my life. Yellow survived being abandoned, getting struck by a car, and he lived through 2020. The night after he passed, I had a dream where my grandma told me that she would take care of him. It was very comforting. A few months after his passing, I finally got an apartment that allowed pets, and I decided to go adopt a cat. When I got there, this massive cat escaped the cat room and came up to me. He was a stray that had been picked up off the street, and unfortunately had an injured paw and lost a toe as a result. He had been there the longest. Maybe it's silly, but I felt like Yellow had led him to me in a way. I knew this sweet boy needed my help. I named him Thunderstorm, because his gray fur with black markings reminded me of a storm cloud. I named yet another cat after their fur color. I guess some things never change. Thunder will know nothing but love for the rest of his life, just like Yellow.